Excellent. Well, let's get this started. First of all, thank you guys so much. That was a fantastic show. I really feel like there were a number of things that feel like they've been growing for years. This just kind of blossomed tonight, which was really fantastic. Before we get started talking, though, could we kind of introduce everybody just so that people in the audience who don't know all of you can introduce yourselves? So,
Can we turn the music off?
But keep sweeping while you're doing it. Knock some leaves down.
perfect track for this today. It is. Good choice.
That was louder.
Yep. So, introductions now that we've turned off after the love is gone. Do we want to start down at the end?
I'm Gabby.
Maybe say who you are and which pieces you were in, just to help people know.
Oh, I was in the first and the second. I'm Nikki. I yelled at Gabby in the first one. I was in the second and the fourth.
I'm Allison. I also yelled at Gabby the first one, and I was in the second piece called Rabbit Hole Cycles.
Hi everybody, I'm Dreamer.
This piece, the last piece.
Hi everybody, I'm Brittany. This is Christiana. And I was in the Bach trio as well as Phoenix. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Amy. I was in the Bach trio and inside Gabby's head.
Yeah, for anyone who didn't pick up on this, Amy was actually live with a mic above you all during that first piece.
But I was actually reading.
I'm Marilee. I'm one of the artistic directors. I choreographed the first and last piece.
I'm Kim. I'm the other artistic director. I choreographed the second and third pieces.
Hi, I'm Matt. I am the resident human prop. I was in Phoenix Cycle and also holding a light in Rabbit Hole Cycles.
Hi, I'm Melanie, and I was in also yelling at Gabby in the first one, in the second piece, and the last piece, Phoenix.
Hi, I'm Liana, and I was in the fourth piece.
Hi, I'm Katie. I was also wearing work in the first for Gabby and in the second for Apple.
And am I correct that you've been with the company longest?
Her and me and Amy, yes,
Two of you,
longest
yes.
standing members.
Yes, so I would like to direct my first question to the two of you. Because it felt like tonight there were a lot of things that I could see that were changes in terms of how the company's been progressing. But I'm curious from inside of it, from you guys as performers, what you've noticed about the process changing or how their relationship has changed. Inside dirt, you guys are not allowed to stifle them at all. I'm going to sit next to you.
The checks aren't signed yet, though.
And either one of you can start.
I mean, okay.
Yeah,
Speaking for Gabby and myself, I feel like we as a group of people have all become a lot more in tune to each other. Like, it's become easier and easier. I think that we're all become more acclimated to the way Kim and Marilee work, and they both work very differently, and I feel like it's become, they both work very differently, and it's a lot easier to go from a Marilee rehearsal to a Kim rehearsal with that knowledge. However, I do feel working with Kim this time, the process was completely different than anything we've ever experienced, ever.
Yeah.
And, but it was...
How so?
Well, since you asked, she walks into the first rehearsal and pulls out sheet music, so already, like, what is that? Kim having music on the first day of rehearsal is not a typical occurrence. We usually hear it for the first time as we're making our entrance on the stage. But she pulls out this sheet of Bach, of course. I knew it without looking at the title. And she color-coded music notes, and she's like, Brittany, you're the yellow line in there, you're the blue line, Amy, you're the purple line. Great! Awesome. See you in Cambridge. But it was cool because it was a fresh take on the old Kim.
Elbows. A lot of elbows are going on there.
nice to get into that like cycle where you come in and you're like, okay, I know what to expect today. I know how the rehearsal is gonna go. Like I know a lot of times we're in rehearsals, like jokes are cracked most of the time. Work is also done, but a lot of jokes happen. And I know Marilee always comes in with an idea. She's like, and today we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do it the entire rehearsal, and then we're gonna try this afterwards. What was interesting though is between the both of them is their take on props and lighting, and so like this 40-foot long sheet of fabric was a bit of a challenge, and she was like, yeah, so it's covering the whole stage, and you have to, we're like moving it across, and like that was different, because I mean, speaking from like other pieces, you know, there's props that you hold in your hand and you can like toss to someone, or like light bulbs hanging from your head, but like not so much, fabric is a lot more difficult to work with.
Matt would know nothing about
Yeah,
that.
but it's been really great to continue on with the process, and I feel like I'm learning as they're learning more and discovering more. So it's like I feel like part of that process, and you're growing with your choreography and stuff. So it's really fun.
And how do you guys, in terms of choosing who's in which pieces, like how, particularly like for the Phoenix piece,
Yes.
did you decide who that person was going to be? Was that something that was clear before you began? Was that something that came out of a process of workshopping stuff?
I'm smiling only because poor Mel is always the person that I turn to when I'm like,
Well,
I'm gonna strap a light bulb.
Exactly. I was actually pretty surprised that that wasn't what you had done.
So it was going to be, and then Dream showed up, and I was like, she's just, there's something about the way that Dream moves that is incredibly strong and yet fluid. And when I was choosing those 4 ladies, I wanted something that was intense and a lot of sharp qualities to their energy. And so very, very early off, I was like, okay, these are the 4. And then Liana actually has been understudying for us, and she was an amazing 5th role for that as well. But on day 1 of rehearsal, when I saw them all move, Dream is set apart because she has this fluidity as she's moving. And I just realized, yep, done. And so I actually think I said to Mel something along the lines of, sorry, Mel, you're not going to be the one with the giant weird prop this time. And Mel was like, that's okay. Yeah, so that was, so it was a little both. I went in being like, oh, it's going to be Mel because duh. And then I saw her move and I thought, oh no, she has a separate characteristic.
And how about for Rabbit Cycle?
Well, I mean, there's a certain type of movement quality that I'm looking for, but also I was definitely looking for a group of people that I felt would explore along with me a little bit. And Allison was new, so I was just taking a chance on Allison, and it worked out great. But it's fantastic. And just people that I knew would kind of play along and also kind of fit a pure movement aesthetic at the same time.
Okay. So you hadn't cast before you began working on it who would be singled out staring into all of those floor lights.
Sorry.
Really,
Did you want the best eye vision plan?
So I will say, Jason, when that happened first, made noises that I've never heard him make as the face got closer and closer to the light.
I kind of singled Nikki out because we've worked together for, you've been with us for like over a year, like 2 years. But she's got this kind of really intense, she's a beast, in all sense of the word, in like the best way. If you want Nikki to try something crazy, she'll try something crazy.
It's funny, we have a Nikki just like that.
Yeah. But yeah, she was the creepiest dancer we had, so we went.
And Nikki, sweetheart, how do you feel about that?
I'm honored.
Good answer, good answer.
But I really love the role. I felt like each time I do it, I become more and more of that person each time. Like the first time I was like a little hesitant, now it's like full force, like trying to freak people out. So it's actually fun. It's a really fun role to have. I love it.
How did you guys work with the lights in rehearsal?
So, whatever fit on my body that I could take from my car to Green Street Studios came to rehearsal, and some days it was a bag of lights, and some days it was like a light bulb on a really long cord that we try and like throw over the pole at Green Street until the weird asbestos came down. Lovely. I don't know if it's asbestos. I had these three kind of light worlds in my head from the start, and we kind of just play with one per rehearsal, and set it up really, really like sparse clamp lights and stuff like that, but try to get the same effect in the space.
Yeah, it was hard as an outsider to that process. In recent years, I've been in a lot of Kim's pieces, or I've been able to stick around and see Kim's piece after my rehearsal. And I have to admit, every week I was like, okay, this week it's a completely different piece. Oh, I get it, there's a sheet. And then I'd come back the next week and be like, nope, there's a light swinging from the ceiling. So I don't know how they all kept track, but it was really interesting to watch it kind of dart around in your brain from week to week. It felt very...
I can tell when you're nervous. For the first, until like a few weeks ago, the Mary like, okay. And then you're like,
yeah. No, it was good.
Is that the first time, Kim, that you've done a soundscape for a piece that had as much of kind of the sensory experience of sound in it? Because it felt a lot like it was a departure from what you've used for sound before.
I've definitely created a whole like sound environment for pieces, but not in the last couple of years. I think we've been pretty melodic in the last couple of years. So definitely not the first time, but definitely the deepest extent that I've taken that.
Yeah, no, it was a really interesting juxtaposition of what you were playing with light-wise, with what you were playing with sound-wise. And it was nice to be able to see both of those being reflections of your personal design that way.
Totally. And it was all actually rehearsal footage. All of the sound was strict from video, except for the toy piano, of course, and the parade, which was obviously
great rehearsal.
Right? But yeah, all taken off of what these guys did in rehearsal over the last few months.
And at what point did that get added in? I mean, given that you showed up at the Bach and the lines of that, at what point was the sound added into the piece?
Like last week, I don't know, 2 weeks ago? Not too long ago.
Sorry, guys. We make it work.
Yeah, and we do.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And in terms of the costume for Phoenix, because there are several elements of that I would imagine took some specific choreography. I mean, both the manipulation of in and out of the skirt, and I'm sure for you, getting the difference of what it's like wrangling human and being able to see, because I would imagine that's a little bit.
Not really possible under there, but it's...
And just like the heat from there must be challenging.
Yeah, it's very much about like seeing with your body, if that makes any sense.
It does,
Like,
it does.
so I mean, obviously we did all of the lifts and whatnot to just get the mechanics of it down before we put the 40-foot sheet on top of it. But it creates, I don't know, it's a totally different experience, like not being able to have like the vision to support like, what you're doing, just kind of like, okay, and I know that she's leaning all the way out over my leg right now. Like, so that was fun and challenging.
And so how long ago did they actually get to start using the real materials for the costumes?
Well, it took so long to put together the costumes.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't say.
And lots of really horrific moments for me of having to track down, because, so it's 40 yards of fabric, and I wanted it to look as smooth as possible, which again, polar opposites. Kim was like, I'm gonna have a sheet and it's gonna be intentionally patchwork. And I'm like, we are so different. So I really wanted something very smooth, and as a result, I would track down every Joanne's. I drove for hours all over the place, and every time they would unroll it, and I needed 10 yards, 4 10-yard chunks of this one specific fabric. And they would unroll and they'd get to 9. They'd be like, sorry. Or this one time they were like, 10, this is great. Oops, I cut it at 8. So I went to about 7 different Joanne's, literally drove, I calculated it, for about 5 hours to get all of the fabric over the course of 2 months. Because I had to keep waiting until the sale came around. So by the time I had actually made it, I was like, okay, we're ready. And Matt actually had just stepped into the role at that point, so the timing was perfect, because I was getting really anxious, because I was like, well, great, now I have this giant tent, but I have no one to lift Dream, and we had a barbecue at one point in which I was trying to figure out a way.
Russell's out of the room, it's
I don't
okay.
think it's good. I originally was going to have Dream sitting on 3 poles that the dancers were going to run really fast and just shove her into the air.
Can I just offer when you
So
start
Matt,
having-
you're replaceable. That's the
when
message.
you start having ideas like that, might I just suggest that you call around to some people who might be able to say to you, 3 poles, 1 dancer, that's not going to end as well as you
It's fine, it's fine. I learned a while back one night when I suddenly realized that whiteout doesn't come off one's face very well, that I should read my text replies. So I came being like, I'm about to put whiteout on for Mythos Pathos years ago, and I didn't bother to wait to see her response, and when I came back with like burns all over my skin, it just said, no!
So just back that up. I feel like you could just get away with that as a comment.
So my point being...
No, you brought this to the table. Why were you putting white out on your face?
For a really cool lighting effect. I was going to do it for the sirens piece. I was going to paint my sirens with whiteout and then have a black one. It was going to be really cool until I realized whiteout does not come off of your face. It was awful. I had to pour nail polish remover on my face. In any case, it was really bad. But in any case, point being, now I've learned, oh, I have this really great idea of how to get Dream in the air. I should probably tell Kim.
Who tells Russell, who says absolutely not.
And then we found Matt.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Yeah. So anyway, so to answer your question seriously, it was all in the first rehearsal. They came in, like Matt said, we did a couple of lifts, and then I said, get under the giant sheet and act like 3 giant poles. And he did. It was wonderful.
No, Phil,
Please.
they use this technique called storyboard. And because of your processes, it's something that you might think about seriously, just playing with,
Yeah.
just singing
Yeah.
a little bit, just to see what happens.
But where's the fucking man? I mean,
But
she
maybe
did
the poles would have gone out the window a little bit.
Oh, they went out very fast. I was like, look at this. I have this sketch in my journal in that room. I was like, look at this.
Followed by the 2 ladders, followed by the tree climbing harness,
Oh.
followed by, there's a few like ... little blanks here, but yeah, pretty fast.
So I have a question at the
Sure. Yeah, please jump in. Yeah.
So, okay, when you're conceptualizing the piece at the very beginning, what directions are you coming from? Because it sounds like you're coming from, there's a piece of costume, there's a piece of lighting, there's a piece of the mechanics, in this case, of how you're going to propel people into the air. Like, how many different angles are you coming from?
Like a 360-degree circle. And like all at once. Yeah. Well, the Bach piece this year was kind of fairly acute for me.
But you said you brought the music in last.
For Bach first. For the Rabbit Hole Cycles piece, it was very, very last. That piece started in January after Sleep Runner, thinking about light bulb volleyball and like fun things, or tetherball, I think we decided it was rather. And some cool kind of lighting ideas. And then we played in rehearsal for a bit, and then we put them away, and I thought some more. And then a piece of music kind of inspired me a little bit to just explore the subjects a little bit more. So I went with the music route for a little while, put that aside, and just we played a lot in rehearsal until something started building.
Yeah, and for me, I would say it starts with visuals mostly. And I literally, I was saying to some friends of mine earlier this week, I literally started just sketching a woman in this giant skirt rising. And I didn't entirely know why, and as I started to dive into that, that's where I found the concept and started to realize that it had to do with burnout, and that drove me into this parallel with the Phoenix, and so then that started to spiral. But what was interesting with that as well is in realizing that I couldn't work with the poles and then having to resort to a human, I actually, I'm sorry, that made it sound. Oh, darn! My bad. No, but honestly, when I made that change, I'm so glad that I did, because the minute that I changed in my sketchbook a human, I suddenly realized that the sheet itself could become a figure and a character. And I think the work is so much more powerful because of that. So kind of like what Kim said, you come to it from, you know, all around. And I also felt very much like I came in with my ideas, but then the necessity of the piece almost shifted my ideas and took it in a better direction. So it's nice having you move. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do other people have questions?
I'd like to hear just more about how she went back up afterwards. Like, how did the story evolve for you, and what were you saying at the end and the inside?
Well, for me, it's cyclical. So the idea, and I'm so sorry if ever we do this, Dream, but the idea is you could keep doing the piece indefinitely. So
You're apologizing to her and not.
No, apologize to her. That is a marathon.
No. But it's yeah, I really wanted to bring it back to the beginning and have her take that time to tidy up her hair, reset, and rise again, as if she's about to do the whole thing again. Because I feel it's interesting. Someone who had read the press release and did a preview for us, and it was a lovely preview, but she just assumed, because it was the story of the Phoenix, she said, and then at the end they rise triumphantly. And for me, it's not that. If anything, they rise at the end exhausted, but they have to go again. So that was that choice.
So with the sheet coming in when it did, how much did you find that once you were working with it, that impacted the imagery that you were using, the partnering that you were using under there? Or did it just all become about the problem solving? Because it felt like watching it. There were a lot of very specific choices about, hard to know from outside, but it looked like perhaps Matt's, the way he was holding his body made it look like an extension of Dream's leg. And so I'm wondering how much that visual came to you as that was happening, or if it was just happy accidents.
I mean, for me, it was definitely, let's pause, do this without the sheet, now put that little section back into the sheet and see how it affects it. But I'd love to hear what you thought on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of try this and see how it looks, and it was like, there's a very specific moment where like Dream is outside of the sheet, has her arms back, and I'm doing that. We tried that in rehearsal, and Merritt was like, "That looks great, but you're sticking your butt out, so can you not do that?" And it was just a lot of like trial and error of aesthetically what made Dream look beautiful or provided an illusion, or just kind of fit the story that Mary wanted, like moments of like me wrapping around her and like, you know, like her fighting the urge to like sleep versus being awake and stuff like that. So there was a lot of, there's a lot of play with like how it looked as well as like what it meant, I felt like, in working with the sheet. So it wasn't, I guess, one or the other. It was just like trial and error.
Right. Yeah, for me, I think this is very challenging. I can see him, and then it's very slippery fabric. And the problem is every time we try, every time it's different because the fabric in between us is a lot of layer. So I can find my feet, and I can find, every time it's different, and sometimes I stuck. Only challenge, the other challenge part is the height. Yeah. So, but very good experience.
Since I'm definitively over, like, very good experience.
That's it.
Yeah. Never have to go through again.
Yesterday, because man cannot see anything in the sheet, and then he rides out in direction like that. I'm trying to spiral, so maybe feel like I'm like
It looks
forward.
forward.
Maybe he feel like, oh, something wrong, and can you
And also, I should toss in too, it was one of those rare, I'm a very slow choreographer. I wish that I was speedy and I'm not. But it was one of those rare moments for me where, just like with Andromeda, that's the only other time this has happened for me, it came together in 2 short 1-hour rehearsals. So it actually just felt very fluid, that one duet. In the same way that Andromeda years ago, I remember Melanie being like, whoa, we're done. Every once in a while, I feel like you just get into a groove and it's just like, that was it. It just all spilled out. So.
I have to say, Kim, I loved watching the second piece with the flying light, because I've learned to compensate, but I have no depth perception. So when that light was flying, I just kept thinking, what are those girls are going to get cracked on the head? Or maybe they're going to keep bringing it forward, and I'm going to get cracked in the head. It was very challenging to watch that piece, but also very interesting because of all the arcs that you're creating. It was really tricky to watch.
Definitely. A lot of very precise measuring. And then when you can't tie the cable on as tight as, say, the guy who came up with the idea, and the light bulb comes in at 4:11 and dress rehearsal instead of 5:02, and Nikki insists that we try it laying down, so safety first. But yeah, we're good now. But yeah, a lot of arcs in that. That's a cycle piece as well. I kind of created that with the idea that it would repeat, so the dancers take the lights that they came in with, exit into like the next space. So really we need like a city block just to like keep going down the street, down the street, down the street. But yeah, interesting that cycles were so prevalent in our show.
That's the original question that I was asking about what comes first. Is it the props? Is it a vision of what the lighting's going to look like? I've got all the choreography worked out in my head now. I can just show people what it is I'm trying to do. Or is it costume, or is it, what? But it's really an amalgamation, it's everything. And I guess at different points, I would think that some things take precedent over others. And then you get into the world of, let's isolate that step and see what we can do with that. And then let's about that light if we want, It's very, very captivating.
Do we have any other questions from audience members? That looks like a question. Yeah?
I was wondering, the way the 4 pieces progressed, was there interaction between the two of you about, okay, so for instance, you had cycles, hey, cycles, and then, we're going to have all the pieces be costumed in black and white until, ta-da, we have color, and only the last one. I mean, was that a discussion, or?
Totally.
Oh, yeah, to an extent, I think.
Well, a discussion in the sense that we'd each already come to our own decisions prior, but then we always sit, once we've gotten to a point where we can see each piece, we usually go and get fruit.
And or climb a hill.
And climb a hill. And eat our fruit. And then we discuss, furry was really key. really
First priority.
But at that point, we sit and we talk about, okay, here's a little bit about my piece, here's a little bit about your piece, how can we make this feel like a consecutive experience in that way?
Yeah. We always have kind of a lot of spontaneous similarities too when we come together. Like I think every show that we've done, we obviously are very, very different creators, but all of the work usually has some kind of common theme, like completely coincidentally, or our wavelength is just like totally crossed.
Yeah, like we each came to the cyclical nature completely separately, which was interesting, that both of us made a longer work that had the possibility of repeating. The black and white thing, though, was when we were sitting on a hill overlooking frosted. It was very romantic. And we were like, wow, I'm just really seeing something monochromatic. And then the hardest part was, how do you title that? Because it sounds so boring.
Yeah.
But it's funny to see what similarities come into play. And then I think with the 4 pieces, Gabby's piece, it's very, very much tied into the real life of, have you done your laundry? Have you done this? Have you done that? And then it starts to pull you back out and onto the stage. And then I feel like Kim's piece kind of plays with what is the stage. And then the Bach piece, of course, Amy is hysterical with her various props and kind of tying the audience back in. And then Phoenix kind of takes it back out to another place. So it felt like a good flow to us. Hopefully it did for you. Maybe you're like, it's terrible.
And that's why they've stayed for the Q&A. It's usually the sign that they need it. Any other questions?
I'm gonna go again. So I'm curious, Brittany, in terms of you making now adjustments in terms of as your body is changing, movements, and how long that has, how long you guys were working on that particular piece, and how you felt like that shifted for you.
Excellent question. When did I come on? I forgot. It's been a while. May. So I didn't find out I was pregnant until like June, and I was like, okay. I just got hired into this new company, and I'm pregnant. Okay, awesome. But it's really been an exploration of both artistic qualities as well as physical for me. At first trimester, hey, I can do that. And then second trimester, obviously, the weight starts coming on because the child's getting bigger. But I found myself being challenged in a way that I never thought I would be. Like with the Bach trio, it's a matter of, spatial awareness, being aware of the space around you. Whereas with Phoenix, it was all about the endurance and staying on top of it. And you guys will vouch for me, the only challenge that I did have, it is not a myth, the pregnancy brain. There was one week where I swear to God, I had no clue what I was doing. Kim texted me, she's like, are you all right? Because that is not in my nature. I don't forget anything, ever. So for me, it was frustrating because I was like, get your shit together. Come on, you have this. So for me, physically, it's just been a real journey for me. And I think it's one of those things that, all dancers don't really think about until it actually happens. And when it does happen, you just learn to go with it and make it your own. Make it work.
This kid's gonna be so artsy.
Or completely opposite.
He's gonna be like, I'm done. I've listened to Bach for way too long. Yeah,
He's
exactly.
been created. He's been listening to Bach. So hopefully he comes out.
Mom, look, I can swing a light over your head. Oh, it almost missed you. It's perfect. Great. Something to look forward
Thank
to.
you for asking.
Well, thanks for staying for the Q&A. I do want to just mention one of the things to be aware of, in addition to supporting Luminarium, which is really a fantastic company, and if you haven't, you should definitely consider supporting them as we get into Giving Tuesday. But Monkeyhouse and Luminarium and a few other organizations are going to be having a fundraiser actually for the Multicultural Arts Center in the spring. The date is
March 25th.
March 25th. And do come out for that. We could not have the dance community that we have without spaces like this, and it's really important that as you support the organizations that you support where we live, play, and create, because without them we have no place to do any of those things, and it all shuts down. So thank you very much for coming, and yes, there's
I have one more
Yeah.
promotional thing. There's also this really fabulous thing happening where a company in Boston gets $1,000 if they get the most quantity of donations, not quantity of dollars, just the number of people who donate. So if you all donate to the campaign to build the new space at the dance complex, you'll just have to donate $15.
in Luminarium's
in
name.
Luminarium's
Or any
name.
company you'd like.
Sure.
It just can't be Monkeyhouse.
Yeah. They could have a chance of winning $1,000, and you all want to do that for them. And all it will cost you is $15. So you should
Just
all
imagine
go
what
and
these
do
two
that.
kids can do with $1,000.
Nice.
So much froyo.
Yeah, very good answer. So much for you. Way to work it.
So excited. It's great.
Excellent.
Thank you all so much. Have a
Thank
really
you.
great day.